Okay. So we are going to be going over suffixes. Do you remember doing that?
Yeah.
Kinda, a little bit. It's like, so when you add an ending to a word, like a root word,
Oh, yeah.
we'll go over some examples. Okay. So, do you remember doing the spelling assessment? So, like most of the words that you had trouble spelling were like the multi-syllabic words, and then so we're doing this because it'll help you with spelling these words, because like if we look at like the word civilize, what would be the root or base word of that, do you think? Is there a word that you can pick out that's still a word if you take away the ending?
It won't save. That's okay. We're doing number 8. We already answered them yesterday.
Civil, yeah. And then you add eyes, civilize, to add meaning, right? Does that make sense? Just like, so fortunate, what would be the root or base word? Fortune? Fortune is a word, right? Okay. Good. So, and then we're gonna do some examples. Can you think of any other words that like you could take away the ending of it and it would still be a word?
Give me a thumbs up when you're there.
Maybe like good and goes in it.
Kind of. Okay, why don't we go over some examples? So like I wrote some down. So like beg, do you know what beg means? So like when you beg for something, like you're like kind of like insistently asking for something. So if we take beg and then we add an AR suffix, an AR ending, it changes to beggar, and a beggar is there, and then a person who asks for something. Does that make sense? A person who begs. So it went from like beg, which is to insistently ask for something, and then if you change it to beggar, it's a person doing something. Do you see how that works?
Yeah.
Just like, so like hot, you know what hot means, like warm, versus like if you add the ER ending to make it hotter, it changes the meaning. Then it means, then it would mean like if you say hotter, then it means it's more warm than something else, right? Just like lie, you know what lie means, something that's not true. And if you make it liar, if you add an AR suffix, then it's a person who's not being truthful, right? And then like smart, it's like someone who is smart. It's like intelligence, or to be intelligent. And then if you say smart test, what would the suffix be with
Like,
smart test?
Smarter than another person or something.
Yeah, to be like the most intelligent. But what's the suffix? What did we add?
We're gonna do both together for practice.
ERT.
EST, sorry. That's my bad. That's my handwriting. But do you see like what we're doing? Like how adding a suffix changes the meaning of the word. Do you have any questions? No? Can you think of any other examples?
Use information from both passages to support your response.
Truth and then truth.
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's really good. So truth is to like would be the truth is the opposite of a lie, to not be deceitful, and to be truthful is to actively, right? So you hit the point. Okay. And by understanding when to add a suffix and like the rules of adding suffixes, that'll help you spell. It'll make spelling a lot easier when you have to do that, because then you can break down the words. So like if you're trying to spell like beggar, which is a hard word to spell,
Well, information
you can
from
look at it and you know, well,
Am I getting information
what
from the
word
first one?
can be on its own. What's the base
Am I
word?
getting information
Bag.
from the second
Yeah.
one?
So you can spell bag, and then you know
As
the
long as we're
rule.
doing that, then we're
You
good.
double your consonant and add AR, right? Just like, so like if you're doing smartest,
Pay attention to the grammar.
how would you break that down to spell
structure,
it?
and
You can
mechanics
think
of
like,
the
if I told you to spell
class.
smartest,
Testing and skill.
you could think like, okay, I know smart is in it, so I could spell smart, and then I know I'm adding est, right? Does that help? Does that help? Do you think? Okay.
Put them away.
Okay.
If our-
And I'm gonna have you do a little worksheet.
Then we're gonna go
It's
back
super,
away.
super easy.
Let's get it done and stop goofing around.
Okay. So you can go ahead and put your name on it.
Well, our hamburger paragraph, that's our topic sentence, so we're gonna do that already. Information from the passages to
Okay.
support it.
So like for these, it says write the correct suffix from the word box to complete the name of each job. Then find the completed words in the word find. Which you don't have to worry about the word find. I mean, just focus on this part. So like it did the first one on its own. So the base word, what would the base word be? Or the root of the word?
Edit.
Right. And then we know that we don't spell editor with an ER.
Mm-hmm.
That's a kind of hard one.
Yeah.
And we don't know edit
Right?
tin isn't a word, and editist isn't a word, right? So editor, OR. Just like, okay. An edit is, what is an edit?
Like, change something.
You make a change. So an editor would be someone who like makes changes. Yeah, so you got it. This is pretty easy, huh?
Mm-hmm.
So like we can do art together. So like we know art is
Press enter to make a space, right? Which we'll do it here in a
Like
second.
drawing or painting.
a lot of different things, right? And so how would we change that? What suffix would we add?
Is gonna come from the first passage.
And that changes it to what meaning?
Like someone who like draws.
Right, someone who does the art. Okay. And then go ahead and fill them out. And if you struggle with one, just let me know. We can get it together.
Paragraph number 1 right now. We're gonna only look in passage 1, okay? So my advice to you, use the first passage for the first paragraph, right? So you don't have to look through both. One first,
Okay.
okay?
We'll go back to that one. Just give it
On
for
my
now.
hamburger paragraph, what is the first thing that I need to write? What's the first thing I need to write that my hamburger paragraph says that we've been doing all year? What is that? Tabitha. A topic sentence. Remember guys, the question says, tell us how bugs are helpful and interesting.
Okay.
What could a good topic sentence be?
So
Don't think too hard.
this
Make it super
one's
easy. What could be a really good
this one's a bit tricky. So the base is comedic, but it's like think of like comedy. And then
How are they helpful
what
and
would you call a person who does comedy or who's
So,
funny?
here we go. These are some ways bugs are helpful.
Yeah.
Guess what? We already have a topic sentence. It can be as easy as that.
A-N.
Yes.
So,
That's a good question.
these are some ways bugs are helpful and interesting. Oh, Miss Messinger forgot. If we
Okay, let's look at this one.
click
That's okay.
before the beat
So
and
violin
make a space,
is an
press
instrument,
space button.
right? And then someone who would play the violin would be a violinist.
Make sure we hint a little bit.
A violinist.
Guys,
That one's a bit tricky because that's not a super familiar word, right?
Because you're just telling them what you're writing about.
But just like artist, right?
It's as easy as that. These are some ways bugs are interesting and helpful. We're telling them what we're about to write about. Friends, after you type this, I want you to look at passage 1. I'm going to give you 4 minutes in passage 1 to find something that tells me how bugs are interesting and helpful. And highlight it. And then I'll call on someone
You
to
got
tell
it.
me.
Yeah.
That one was a bit tricky.
Look at passage 1. We don't need to look at passage 2 yet.
So like sometimes the base word, like if you actually say it, for what it gives you, it doesn't always like make sense of what word it is. So this says like politic, or you can think like do you know what politics are?
No.
So it's like the government, like the president, like senators and governors.
This is kind of your opinion.
Yeah.
Whatever's interesting to you.
So like politics are like,
they're being helpful.
oh, this is a tricky one to explain. Okay, so like politics would be like, it's like where you like negotiate and you like make like laws and everything. So a I bet you've heard this word before. But a politician is the person who does the politics. So it'd be AIN.
Alright, now this one.
Okay. So this one would be OR. Sometimes it's really tricky between knowing when to put an OR and ER. Like sometimes I mess up on that. That can be really hard. But like a good usually, so like do you see a pattern with like if it ends in something that's an OR versus an ER? So we see that like a lot of it, if it ends with a T, it's an OR. Does that help?
Oh yeah.
Versus like the ERs, they're not. See, like it's helpful to look at like patterns. So like the words that are like the ends in the C are IAN, right?
All you have to do.
Does it? Okay. Do you have any questions? Is that confusing at all? Does that help?
Kinda.
So like if I asked you to spell like if I asked you to spell truthful, could you spell that for me? Could you like find a way to break that down and spell it for me? Yeah. So you picked out truth, right, as your base word, and then you added full because truthful. So like there's a lot of different ways we can break down our words to help spell them. And when we're adding like suffixes, sometimes it's like it becomes a more complex word and it's a little bit more difficult to spell. But if we break it down between the suffix and the like the base and the root of the word, then that can be kind of helpful. right? Because sometimes it's the way our brains work. And then we see that it changes the meaning of the word, right? So like farm would be the base root of farmer, right? And farm is a place.
Yeah.
And then, but if we add ER, it becomes
A place.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that was all I have for you.
Okay.
Thank you. Hang on, let me stop this.